you acquired property and you tried hiring property management, but you found that really the key to long-term success is good property management, which is why you actually started taking over and learning property management yourself. I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter. Hello, I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need, and the tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter, and today we have an amazing guest. I say this, I think, almost every show now. I would not invite people to my podcast, to my show, which is on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, and some other 4 or 5 other platforms. And it's also going to be on the Christina Suter Amazon TV channel. I would not invite people unless I felt like they had something profound and of deep quality to give you. Either they as a human being are profound, which David is, or they have a profound system that is worth learning about because it will develop and help you to develop to break through to your financial freedom. So, David Tilney, wonderful to have you here on the show.
Oh, thanks, Christina. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You know, I was looking at your bio, and honestly, I feel like it's a little long for me to read. So can I just grab some highlights from it? Will you forgive me that?
You don't need to read any of it if you don't want.
I do. I want people to have some sense. Like, you started buying houses in 1978. Okay. Yeah. I probably had my first house in 1986, 1987. So definitely a decade longer than I have, which means probably about 40 decades. We'll call it 40 plus, not decades, 40 plus years, 4 decades. You acquired property and you tried hiring property management, but you found that really the key to long-term success is good property management, which is why you actually started taking over and learning property management yourself. Right now, it's kind of, you have this system. The hassle-free property management is a sum total of all your experiences and your innovations. It's the nuts and bolts course designed to give you specific tools to help your operation be more efficient. It'll teach you how to reduce stress, important, increase cash flow, important, find more time for other pursuits, which is a lot of the reason why people invest in real estate, by changing the entire way you view and work with tenants. You also do this from long distance from Colorado, even though you own in Florida, but you also own in Colorado. You own in both states?
No. All my properties are in Colorado Springs area, with the exception of a couple of houses outside of Atlanta where I'm the money guy and someone else is the finder, fixer, and operator.
Okay. And in that, you've also talked about master leasing. I mean, the beauty of a strong management system coupled with the master leasing system is that you get control over assets, that you property manage and have long-term healthy tenants in. I mean, let's talk about, my first question normally is, what do you do before real estate? But I want to get to this topic. So what do you do before real estate? And then let's get into this sort of optimal system you've created.
Fair enough. Let me back up even a little before that. I was a terrible student in school. I hated school all the way through school. And so when I went to college, it was either get the heck out quick or drop out. So I got out in a little over 3 years. And I was married the last quarter I was in school. And so I graduated in December, and my wife, Mary, had some time left. She said, "My gosh, you need a job." And I thought, no big deal, I'll get a job. And I didn't realize that, I was a psych major, and so there was a limited market. Anyway, I went to work for the JCPenney company and went through their management training program, and they trained me and tested me, and ultimately moved us from Denver to Colorado Springs. Okay. So that's how I got to Colorado Springs. And we really thought we wouldn't stay there, because when we first got there, we got there in 1975. It was just young military guys and old retired people, no restaurants, not much. Yes. What a change. I mean, my gosh, now there's lots of doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs, and it's a great town. But it grew on us. We decided to raise a family there. And while I was at the JCPenney company, one of my friends, another guy who worked there, pushed and pulled and dragged me and forced me to buy my first house against my will.
How do you buy a house against your will, David? Come on.
Well, I mean, he told me I really needed to start in this business, and we bought this little house for I think $28,500. Took it subject to a low interest VA loan, which was 8%. People don't realize that 8% was very low interest back then.
Right.
And we borrowed the down payment, I probably off our credit cards back then, and ultimately we wrapped the financing and sold the property, meaning we probably sold it at 10% total interest, wrapping the existing 8% and throwing in some equity, and that's kind of how I got started. Then I bought a couple more properties with the same individual, and all of a sudden I thought I was an expert until I crashed and burned, which is kind of what happens. But I left the penny company.
I was going to say, yeah, when you leave the penny company?
I think it was 77, 70.
Okay.
No, it must have been, if I bought my first house in 78, it must have been 78 because I bought that house when I was there. And I sold insurance for a couple of years.
Okay.
I went into the insurance industry because I interviewed, I think 31 people in the local chamber of commerce that I called up and wanted to go see. And my approach was, I'm a young entrepreneur the way you were 30 years ago, and I want to take you to lunch and throw some things at you, and you tell me why I'm all wet. And I was able to see all but, I believe, one, was offered several jobs. And one of the individuals that gave me some time said, nothing's worth a dime until you learn how to sell it. Go talk to this insurance company. And I said, why would I do that? I don't believe in any insurance, and that's the last thing I do. And he said, just go see the guy. He's an MBA out of Harvard, which really impressed me. In hindsight, it wouldn't impress me, but it did impress me. And I went up and spent some time with him, and he said, well, we'll offer you a job and offer you a draw of so much. And I said, no, I need more than that. And he said, well, if I did that, I'd have to take it out of my own pocket. And I said, well, that's good, because then it'll force you to make me the best guy in your agency. And that's really how I started. And the agency was in Denver and I was in Colorado Springs. And the best thing that the insurance industry did for me, two things really. Number one, it taught me to get past the fear threshold of talking to people, doors, doing whatever it took. And we targeted the business and medical professions with disability insurance, and then would bridge to life insurance. And the other thing it did was it taught me taxes. I took all the courses I could on estate planning, taxes, but the whole time I was there, I kept buying houses. And so finally one day I said, why am I doing this? And I resigned and kept with the houses. I think I bought 7 houses while I went through real estate broker school, sold the 7 houses, and then managed them for the people I'd sold them to. And that paid for going through brokerage school and
that's brilliant.
Got me started. And you're right. I mean, we tested, I can't remember if it's we tested at least 2 management companies prior to me getting in the management business. And it was not something I ever thought I wanted to do, because I really, for a while, was a deal junkie. I mean, I want to make a deal, and let's not, I don't want to look at the little mundane stuff, but I realized that if you didn't have the systems in place, you wouldn't survive long term. And most of the people I knew in the management business weren't that effective, number one. They didn't have the attention to detail and follow through. But the other thing is they all burned out in about 20, 25 years. And at some point they said, I never want to see another tenant as long as I live. I want to sell everything I've got. I want to buy government bonds, clip coupons, and I'm done.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And that wasn't my approach. I wanted to do something that, no one at age 65 could tell me I had to retire, that I could do this if I was healthy into my 90s or whatever. And I find it, too often older folks get cut off. They don't have people to talk to. Well, I've got my tenants, and generally speaking, they're terrific human beings that do a wonderful job for me, and I have a heck of a good time.
So I love your system. I've studied taken your class. I've been to the Masters of Real Estate. I've sat in on, I don't know if I've taken your class, but I've sat in on the coursework at the Masters of Real Estate twice now, I think. Might be where I've learned the information. I've bought the packet that you've got. So
No, I had a packet for sale. You did come to my hassle-free property management, I believe.
is that what it is? I went to the hassle-free property because I remember listening to you go step by step by step by step. So it must be somebody else's packet I bought at the Masters of Real Estate. I apologize. I apologize for my mistake. You alluded to this a moment ago. You worked for somebody else. You bought insurance. You were working for insurance, but you were buying houses. And there was a point when you said, hey, I thought I was, hot potatoes, that I had really worked this out. And then life happened and we had a downturn, I'm assuming. Tell me about that.
Well, I've been through several downturns. I think
But this was the first, and the one with the learning curve, right?
Yeah, there was a worse one later. I mean,
okay. I've got two of those too. So go ahead.
You got to hit me over the head with a 4x4 sometimes. But I mean, I think at some point I thought it's all numbers. The first year and a half I was in the business, I went through all 5 of the CCIM classes. They were all 1-week classes. So I understood internal rates of returns and financial management rates of returns. And they teach you that you can compare apples and oranges, totally different investments, and it all comes down to numbers, which of course is totally bogus because the assumptions are always wrong. But I thought buying houses were strictly numbers, and so I got really great, and I said, I don't need to see the inside of the house until after closing. It's all numbers. And I found that things weren't exactly left pristine, and where in walking through before we put a contract on it, everything was painted and looked terrific. What I didn't realize is when they moved, they never painted behind any of the furniture, and they didn't leave any of the paint. And so, my gosh, we had to redo the whole thing anyway. Anyway, I looked simple little things that I learned. Bigger problems I had going along. I mean, nothing really wiped me out. The biggest one I had was I had 3 deals go bad at the same time.
Okay.
That was crushing. That was really crushing.
Let's hear a little bit about that. Because I mean, real estate it's a huge, the thing about real estate is you get into it. You know this. You've been a teacher in real estate for a very long time. You've seen, I'm sure, student after student, super excited, get into real estate. They double down. Things are going well. And then there's the first learning curve, or maybe the big learning curve. And then the question becomes, who are you in that moment? And who are, what do they do? And how do they solve that? So what was your moment? And what was it like? What happened? What did you do? And how did you solve it?
Well, I had, for a while, I was the largest buyer of foreclosures in my county. And I had pretty significant lines of credit for me at that stage of my life. I had a $200,000 line of credit with one bank, and I went to them and said, you've got to introduce me to the second best bank in town so I can get another line of credit. And they said, why would we do that? And I said, well, your loan committee won't be operating someday, and I don't want to be in a jam. And so they did, and I had I think another $175,000 from another bank. And this bank courted me because we had a pretty good success record. And they asked me to come look at a house. And they said, beautiful house, you got to come see it. And as I've been told many times since, beautiful should only be an adjective left to describe women. But they got me to drive out to this place, and it was outside my area of expertise. It was a half an hour away. It was in Black Forest, which is north of Colorado Springs. And I negotiated a deal, which I thought was the best deal I'd ever negotiated. I negotiated to buy a house for it was appraised for $150,000. I bought it for $127,500. I bought it no money down. I borrowed all the money at 10% annual payments in arrears. I wanted it all non-recourse. They could only go 85% non-recourse. So I wrote the notes, and the first note was an 85% non-recourse note, and the second was, or maybe it was the other way around, 15% recourse. But after 2, or I can't remember, maybe it was 3 years, the small note rolled into the first, so the whole thing was non-recourse. And I thought, gee, how can I go wrong? That's a great deal. Well, I lost 50 grand on that house, 36,000 in hard cash dollars, and the rest recapture and depreciation. And, you know, I don't need to give you the whole long story, but it was an area, this was back when Reagan drop kicked all the air traffic controllers. And I'd rented it to an air traffic controller and his stewardess wife. And on the 10th of December, they jumped ship on my lease. And, you know, I could throw good money after bad, but it really didn't make much sense because they'd gone across state lines, and I couldn't release it until the following June. So I realized at that point, there are times when you can't lease a property. There was snow on the ground, or dirt roads, you had to plow the roads. I had electric heat. It was a heat pump, which is an air conditioning system run in reverse. The altitude was too high. It had a backup heat strip furnace. Cost me a tremendous amount to heat it. It was vacant, couldn't fill it. Long story short, I lost that money. But at the same time I had that deal go bad, I had another deal that I was a member of a group that we met once a month at the Broadmoor, and all of us did different things. One guy was a land guy, one guy was a commercial guy, and we all kind of had bragging rights that we knew what we were doing. And I used to buy bad notes from Beneficial Finance, which was a little loan company, and I'd go around to the offices, and the little the gal who ran it, she got a spiff each month based on her performing notes, meaning having no bad notes. And so I'd go around and say, what do you have that you want me to look at? And I'd go look at it and check out the properties and sometimes buy them and either buy the people out or foreclose or whatever. And I had this house, again, that was out of my area of expertise. It was in Woodland Park, Colorado. And so I took it to this meeting and gave it to someone who lived up there and said, if you can do something with it, have fun. I'm out of it. And he took a look at it and said, there's too much money left on the table here. Why don't we do it together? And I'll do all the work, the heavy lifting, and we'll split the profits. And he appealed to my greed. And that's a problem. You got to really be careful. And so for years, ever since then, that and the third thing, because obviously that went south, what happened there was I became aware he didn't have a signature and he couldn't come up with the money. And he was looking to me to borrow the money. And I said, no, we're doing it ourselves. You got to come up with your own money. And he couldn't. So I went back to Beneficial Finance and said, you know, this is really out of my area of expertise, and I'd rather not do it, but I've done a number of transactions with you and I want to do more. I'd like you to let me out of it, but if you push me, I'll go forward. And they pushed me. Okay. And there were all kinds of problems. And I tried to sell it and take a $15,000 loss, and no one offered me a $15,000 loss. So that went bad at that time. And the third thing that went bad was I bought a building. Actually, I had a foreclosure that I owned right. And I had a friend who was a real good rehabber. He'd take Victorians and turn them into office space, and just, he had a crew that could do great things. And I had this house that needed a crew. And I said, you know, I've got this place that's great. Why don't I give you half of it and bring your crew in and run it? And he said, that's great. He said, I got this building that I want to office in. Why don't you office upstairs and I'll office downstairs, and we'll do them both. And that sounded great. In fact, we never used his crew because I had someone who offered to buy the property from me, where I made 100% on my money before we ever did that. But I did give him half the appreciation, it was half the profit. Mm-hmm. Then I did a transaction with him, and I just got to tell you, the only partnership I really want to have is with my spouse. And we've been married 46 years, and you know, I think it might work, but a lot of them don't. And it's real easy to start a partnership or a joint venture and get involved with people, real hard to get out of them. The guy who got me involved with the real estate initially, we are still great friends. We've done a number of transactions together. I would write him a check for a very large amount of money and give it to him and know that 5 years later I'd get it back, maybe with interest. But it's hard to find that kind of person. And I think when you're starting out, be careful. I mean, go one foot forward, 1 foot back. Rather than do partnerships, carve up the benefits. And that's what I learned from Gary Johnston, because I really was, you know, he always points out that real estate is a team sport, and he's absolutely right. But if you're not going to partner, then how can you make that happen? And the way you do it is have one person own the property, one person have the debt on the property, loan against the property, have one person master lease the property or manage it, have one person have an option on it. You can carve up all those various benefits so that each person controls 100% of what they have, and they can sell what they've got and get out at any one point in time. But you have to wonder, when's the right time to do something? Everyone controls their piece of the puzzle, so to speak. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I mean, I get the basic concept of it. I'm not, I can see how, you can divide up the pieces and parts of the deal so that each person can choose to step in and step out of the deal at the time, right? But how do you decide to make the whole project move forward then? Does it make sense? Like, how do you get everybody to keep playing together?
Well, I mentioned that I've got several houses outside of Atlanta that I own with someone I've known for years. And we bought 3 houses, and the total cost to buy the houses, turnkey, fixed up and ready to go. And one's a 4-3-2, one's a 3-2 carport, or 1, I think, or maybe a carport, and then a 3-2 nothing, something on that order. And he owns them. And I have 2, one of my entities is the lender and loan the money. And it cost us $114,000 to buy all 3 of them, turned up, ready to go and renting. And Tilney has an option on half the upswing. And so half the net rent from the project is considered interest to me. And he decides he wants to sell them because he's in control of that. I'm not. He's entitled. When he decides to sell, then Tilney gets a capital gain on half the upswing. And so that works out pretty well.
It's actually a really great example. It really is. I mean, part of it, I have to confess, I have a personal agenda around this exact topic because I've just finished my second partnership, or I'm just in the middle of having my second partnership, and it ain't ending the way I want it to end. And so I'm like, well, how do you do a team sport and have it be where, the team can be successful? Because you can't do, I haven't figured out how to do real estate alone and be efficient and effective getting it done. Right? I've tried, and I suck at certain pieces, truth be told, and I shouldn't be doing certain pieces because I'm not good at those pieces, and that I have worked out. But then being able to figure out how to have a partnership where it doesn't end in this sort of bad fashion. This is my second one. So it's good to know, like, that makes sense when you describe it that way, that you can divide a partnership through pieces of ownership, whether you're lending on the property, that's a clear, distinct piece. Right? You own a note. You can choose what to do with the note. You can own the property. You have title on the property. You can have a clear understanding about the interest being paid to you, or equity or share being paid to you. And that share can be sold, right? Independently, if you want to sell that.
Sell the note.
Because all his is a note. So now you actually have divided the deal.
I can sell my option. And, and he can sell the property, and he gets, for running it, he gets half the income as for running the darn thing, putting it together. He's the finder, fixer, operator. And he works hard on that, I'm sure, based on where it is. But I'm doing quite a bit better than I am putting my money in the bank at 0.06% or something else. So it works out well for all.
It does sound really good. So when we went back to your hardest moment in investing, when we had 3 different things that went wrong at the same time, and then we got distracted by this brilliant ideas of yours about partnership, which I really appreciate because I personally need the lesson right now. So thank you for teaching me. I actually really do. How'd you solve being in 3 bad deals, and how did it help you grow up? I mean, some people give up. Some people get in real estate, they get in a corner, they give up. What'd you do, and how did it help you grow up?
Well, the first thing I tell you is I was sitting in a restaurant in downtown Colorado Springs with my wife, and I started to go to pieces because it was just too much for me to handle.
Right.
And I said, you got to get me out of here. And she said, well, where do we go? And I said, just drive west. And finally I said, Lord, why me? I've done everything right. I've done everything I could possibly do. I kept digging the hole deeper is really what I did. And I said, it's too tough for me. It's your problem now. And then things got better right away. Now, there were different pieces of it. For example, the property that I lost 50 grand on. The problem is I had a 5-year call on it, 5-year balloon. And I was current on the darn thing. And I went to the lender after 3 years, I think. And I'd finished out some more space. I had it reappraised. It appraised for 165, so it gone up in value. And I said, I'm going to take 6 months, put it on the market, and sell it. If it doesn't sell, I'm giving it back to you guys because I'm not having fun with it. And they said, well, why would you ever give it back? It's, you know, there's so much here. And so I put it on the market for 159.9, 149.9, 139.9, and 129.9, and it didn't sell. So times when real estate won't sell. I don't care what people tell you. You say you drop the price, it will sell. Not true. Depends on the location. Things happen. And so I had gone to the bank and I said, I want you to write me a letter that says this doesn't affect our business or personal relationship with the bank. And initially that was okay. And then they started to get squeamish. And I was going back to the East Coast for Christmas. And I gave a quitclaim deed to my office manager. And I said, don't give this to the bank until I call you. And so I called them from Chicago and I called them from Newark Airport. It didn't work out. And I really wanted to take place that year from a tax standpoint. Bottom line is I didn't give them the deed that year. And I went back in January and I just raised Cain. I said, I want all the decision makers in a room. And the bank said, well, we're afraid that if we do that, you won't give us the deed. And they had it under contract to sell. So it was a little awkward for them. And I said, well, you'll never get the deed unless you get all the players in the room. So we had a meeting and I said, I want this letter. And the banker said, well, you're covered with it being non-recourse. They said, why do you want it? I said, it will give me warm fuzzies at night when I go to sleep. I think that's really important. It's really important. So the president and owner of the bank said, well, I'll have to write the letter. But he said, we don't feel very good because taxes are owed right now, property taxes. And I said, well, tell me what you want me to do. And they said, well, we'd like you to pay half. So I said, done. So I went down and paid all. And then I sent him the receipts and he called me up and he said, I thought you were going to pay half. I said, that's right. So now the ball's in your court. And they did send me back a check and things got better. But what did I learn? I learned I didn't want to ever do business with banks again. And I stopped doing business with banks. And that's a crucial big change in the way I did business. Getting rid of partnerships, that was a big thing too.
Right.
Now, did that retard my growth in the real estate? Absolutely it did. I was much slower since I had to come up with my own sources of money and creative finance. And it was just me and I didn't rely on a bunch of network stuff. That did make it much tougher, but all I can tell you is I was happier in the process. Had I met people like Gary Johnston with his Financial Freedom Fundamentals class, maybe I would have done a lot more, but I did enough to support our family and to provide a good lifestyle. And, you know, that's what it was all about.
And I've never heard you ever complain that you haven't been able to fulfill having the lifestyle you want. I mean, maybe it's only because I hear you speak from the stage more often than anywhere else, but I just don't get the sense that, you know, there's a point in your life when you look back and you go, do I regret it? Right? Yeah. Do I regret what I've done or do I not? And the answer looks like it's no.
No, I don't regret anything. I've been so blessed. You know, first of all, I told my kids when they were growing up that they'd exceeded my wildest expectations. And my wife always said, you have very low expectations. they really have. And no, in everything. I mean, first of all, I got the brass ring when I married the right gal. And how lucky was that? I could have screwed up in so many ways. You're young, the hormones are raging. And
yeah, you could have. Trust me. I know many young men who feel that way.
Well, so yeah, no, I'm very blessed.
You know, I think what's important, and I know that my spiritual life is very important to me, but I don't broadcast it as my primary conversation. Right. And I heard you speak to the same thing, which is, you know, when I was losing it, when it was that time where, you know, for me, it was sitting in a chair in my office and I'm in tears, right? Tears and tears and tears. And my husband's pushing on me to short sale everything, whatever it is, get rid of it all. And I did end up getting rid of it all. But I remember sitting in the chair in tears going, who the hell am I going to be?
Yeah, wow.
I mean, it wasn't so much a question about the real estate. It was, who's Christina going to be? How am I going to address this based upon who Christina wants to be? And am I going to double down, and am I going to do something here so that I'm proud of myself and made it right, made it straight? In my world, that's what I call it, right? And it sounds like, you had that moment in, when you were at the restaurant,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely, I went to pieces, and I had to give it away, and gave it away. Then things got better.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
And
I was willing to give away the office building, which I really wanted, and so we had a final meeting and went to lunch. And what the other individual didn't know is I had a quitclaim deed in my back pocket. I never had to bring it out. He said, our deal on that partnership was one person names the price and the other person decides whether he's buying or selling.
right.
He named the price, but he told his leasing agent that he was going to get the building. So he named the price, and I said, I'll buy, and he wouldn't sell it. And that was the crisis on that. So I had all these three things that had gone wrong. And bottom line is, I worked my way out. I think the Lord helped me get through them all, quite honestly. I mean, there was no way I'd know when we went to lunch that all of a sudden he'd back down and say, you were right, I was wrong, it's your building.
Right.
And I still have that building today.
Yes. And I'm a great believer of that. Give it over, give it up, whatever your version is. I call it being on purpose, because I really believe that God or grace gives us our purpose. So stay on course, and I every day I ask for that guidance. Make sure I stay on course. Make sure I don't frick it up too badly. Okay. Because I know I can. if I follow you, and I will be done, not to be too traditional, I apologize. My life goes so much better if I really just keep trying to stay on the purpose that God has for me. Between you and me and all of the people listening to the show, there you go. So that's how it helped you grow up. Because I knew that there was a 50-50 chance inside of me that I would turn away, that I felt so beaten and so incapable of moving these mistakes that I had made forward, that I think it takes a lot of internal mettle and determination to do that. And it's a real growth moment. I like myself better as a human being now that I've done it.
Yeah, now let me make a comment that
Yes.
I got scared going through that. And so I immediately took a bunch of my properties and sold them, paid the darn tax, took the cash and paid off debt on other properties and deleveraged.
Mm-hmm.
And then back, I think really the Lord prepared me for the downturn so that no matter what happened, I could cut my rents in half and they wouldn't take my properties away.
Okay.
I think that's really, that really helped me a lot. But it also meant that I never became the guy that owned 250 houses. That wasn't that important to me. What was important is that I had good houses for good people to live in long term. And that was really important to me.
I get that. We kind of flipped the format of the show because you went right to it. So I'll double. I no, there's no complaint there. Not at all. But I just, you've answered for me a lot of the questions I had having to do with financial freedom. And so I will ask one more question on that front, and then I'll double back to your system that you've crafted between master leasing and tenant management. What has made the difference for you? There's generally like a moment or a time where you go, I've hit it. I'm okay now. Whatever the anxiety, whatever it was that drove you towards wanting to have a real estate portfolio for your financial freedom, there's a point where you hit that, where you realize you're there. Maybe it's 5 years after you're actually there. Maybe it's 5 months after you're actually there. Like, what was that moment in your being, and what difference has it made in your life to be financially free?
Well, I think the time when I knew that I could survive stuff was when I'd gotten through those 3 bad situations and sold off properties and paid down debt and built up cash flow. I mean, Mary would tell you that in our early marriage, well, for a long time, I mean, we didn't take any money out of the real estate for 7 years in the business,
Mm-hmm.
and throwing it back in.
Right.
And And she felt it was like Sisyphus rolling this big boulder up the hill, and it rolled very, very slowly. And you measured it in inches, and finally you'd get to the top of the hill, but it was a plateau. So it rolled, but eventually it starts rolling down the other side, and all this money starts coming in, once I got rid of some of the big amounts of debts and found I could do business without my lines of credit, and I didn't have to use my signature, that really helped. I wasn't financially free necessarily at that point. I still was looking to acquire, and you look at how you start, or at least how I did it. I started buying what I could buy, which was junk. And then the next stage is get the junk paid off as quick as you can, and pay it off, and then exchange it into better stuff, and then get that paid off, and then put in the gold faucet so your kids won't sell it the moment you drop dead and buy something red that goes fast. And that was kind of, there are a lot of other things in the middle. I was in the mortgage business, foreclosure business, tax sale, but that's the long-term plan. And at this stage, I'm an ender. I'm not looking to start over. I'm not looking at a lot of risk. I have a nice lifestyle, but I like what I do. I think we provide a tremendous product in the marketplace for good folks to live. I really enjoy my tenants, but again, I've probably taken you where you didn't want me to go.
Totally good. Answer your question your way, David. It's about your life and what you've learned. So every answer is going to be different. And I love that. I love the personalness of your answer and the personalness of your investing. That's kind of what's behind your approach, which is, what stood out to me when you talk about, how you rent out your units is one of the most personal, and I want to call it boundaried, if I may use that word, but personal and well-bounded. You have a background in psychology, so you know what I mean by having boundaries, right? So personal and well-boundaried way of renting things out, like all the way down to the vacuum cleaner. Have I told you the story about the vacuum cleaner?
No.
Okay, so this is a moment I had in your class. So you're describing some of the things that you go through when you have conversations with people and the application process. And one of the things that you have, I believe, if I remember this correctly, one of the things you have on that application is, do they own a vacuum? And I would have failed, David, when I was a younger woman. I lived in an apartment with 3 cats for 5 years with no vacuum. The apartment was horrible. By the time I was done with 3 cats for 5 years, there was a lot of cat hair and all over the apartment. And here's the thing that I found so profound. I know it's just a vacuum, but it actually struck me was I've owned multi-units and single families in multiple different states, and I don't ask people if they have a vacuum cleaner. And yet I know personally, what that does to a unit. And now I know personally that I have 3 vacuum cleaners. I have a little Bombas, I have a little handheld, and I have a big one I push around because, I don't like living in that kind of filth. So I love that you've taught me to not even rent to who I used to be. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. Now, I don't want you to think I did that up front. That only got added in the last couple of years, actually. That and do you have a mop? Because I found, the biggest places I've had a problem recently is the white-collar, high-end properties. I had some folks that didn't have them, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's a norm. So you learn from being in this business long enough as to things to add.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the genius of the master leasing and the way that you talk to your tenants when you lend out to a tenant. Let's take another 10 minutes to talk about that, just so people can get a sense for what's the culmination of the years of experience and the discipline you've created around that.
Okay, you want me to start on a little bit on master leasing?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do a little bit on master leasing. I don't know if everybody knows the concept of master leasing, so just at least teach us the concept.
Okay. I really come from the idea that you never own anything. You just get to use something for a period of time. And the example I would give you is, how did I get title to a single family house just by paying someone else's property taxes? You're always paying someone. If you don't pay your taxes, the government entity is going to steal it from you.
That's right.
So we get hung up that we've got to have our name on the side of the building and we've got to own the thing. You know,
I do.
Rockefeller said, control everything, own nothing. And it's the control that you want. I mean, I leased a house for 35 years at a fixed rent one time. And I secured my lease with a deed of trust that said that if the owner didn't pay the underlying encumbrances and the taxes and insurance, I could foreclose it. Now, that's pretty darn good control.
It
The
is.
IRS, in fact, says that if you have a leasehold interest greater than 30 years or more, you do own it. So I could do a 1031 tax deferred exchange with my leasehold interest. There were lots of things I could do. And bottom line is, when I found the tenant I could force to buy the house, which was always the objective because I didn't like the house, then we sold the house and I was given half the appreciation to remove my lease from the property in the process. So, I mean, I got tremendous benefits from it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you figure that if you are entitled on the house, the best you can do is write off the improvements on the house over 27 and a half years. Whereas my rent payments to the owner, I wrote off 100% of them. Every rent payment I made, I had no recapture of depreciation. It was a very, very efficient way to do business. No money down, it was positive cash flow. That, in essence, is a master lease. And it's been done, for centuries in commercial markets and what, I mean, you know, Hong Kong's having all these problems right now today with people wanting freedom. But think about it, Hong Kong was leased from the People's Republic of China by the Brits for 100 years. Most of Hawaii is on land leases, 60-year land leases. Most hotels, one outfit owns the ground, another outfit leases the ground, builds the hotel. Then they sublease to catering companies or they sublease to Marriott for 10 years. And you know, so those are all master leases. And it's just a way to control property. And I think it's the most efficient way that I can think of. And when I started in 1981 managing other people's property, the biggest problems I ever had in management was never the tenants, it was the owners. They thought they owned the property and they wanted to call me up and tell me what to do with it. They didn't understand that all I had was my time and my expertise and they had to leave me alone and give me free run. On October 1st of 96, I canceled every agency relationship I had when I used to manage properties for others and turned around and leased the properties I used to manage. And we had a little over 100 houses. And I did not lose one account, but I gained so much more control. All I had to do was send the owners a check. And it was a much better way to do business. And a master lease can be a performance master lease where I only agree to pay a percentage of what I receive if and when I receive it. It can be a fixed master lease where I guarantee to pay so much a month, whether it's vacant or full, take on so many of the expenses, or anything in between. It's just whatever your mind can achieve, which means it's not a one size fits all, which means in negotiating with owners, your objective is to find out what they need, give them what they need, find out what's left, and take everything that's left. And that is a wonderful opportunity. The other thing it allows you to do is it allows you to have time to essentially whittle and rock with the owners, to get comfortable with them, for them to get to trust you. Because people may not want to sell their property today, right now, when you're looking to buy, but they will someday. And if you're there and you're taking care of it and they like you and they trust you and you're under-promising and over-performing, who are they going to make a deal with when they're ready to sell? It was a wonderful way for me to, quote-unquote, test drive properties and see if I was even interested in them. Because not all rentals, not all houses make good properties.
No, they don't. I've learned that one the hard way. What is it that has you want to not have ownership over? I mean, the beauty of being able to get 50% of the upside, because that's why I want ownership. I want ownership because I want the appreciation that's going to happen after 15, 20 years of owning it and renting it out. But you're like, well, I don't have to own it. I can master lease it, but then you're still keeping some of the appreciation. I mean, that seems like a good reason to not own it, but why not own it?
Well, let me answer two things. First, I was offered 100% of the appreciation, but I find the way you do deals is you leave some money in the middle of the table and you make multiple deals. And that same individual loaned me a bunch of money. He sold me another house at 0% interest in a second loan, giving me that house free and clear, putting on another property. We did a lot of other transactions. So I think I can get all the appreciation. I think if you add an option to it, I can also get the amortization. And I like amortization a lot if you're just have an option on their equity, not on the price point. So I think you can do a lot. Now, I don't own any properties in my name and haven't for a long time. I'm a trust fund baby that, you know, great Uncle Harry, I guess. I don't really want to go there too much,
Right.
but I don't think there's a benefit of sitting on the front page of the newspaper on the hood of your Maserati. It may be good if you're selling seminars or something else. But, you know, Jack Miller, who is my main mentor, said, you really want to emulate the cockroach. They've been around for millions of years. They live in the best homes. They eat the best food. But when the light comes on, they run like heck.
Right, they do.
Low profile is always better than high profile, I think, unless you're dealing with your ego. And I can deal with that.
So it's not so much that you don't want to own the properties, that you don't want it to be visible in your name.
I certainly have income from properties that ultimately flow through to my tax return.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. So there is some ownership and then some master leasing.
Oh, I wouldn't do, I mean, you got to throw a lot of money at the wall, do it lots of different ways. We've told our kids that, you know, when you're starting out without capital, that I don't think there's a better way than master leasing. But my gosh, there's nothing wrong with owning real estate at some point in time, and we have from day one.
So because we're almost out of time. So I want to ask you, because it's almost 2 o'clock. Not that matters to anybody who's listening to this, but that tell us about, because now you control the property, whether you control it because it's one of your entities or you control it because you master lease it. And I love the master leasing because I love the concept of being able to pay. Master lease is like paying a mortgage. It's a simple, straight up payment. You know what it is. You know what it's going to be, and it gives you control over property without having to put all the money in the equity into the property. So I love that concept.
And since you create the documents, it's non-recourse.
Since you create the documents, it's non-recourse. And I know you have an email group that goes around. So, you know, people want to take your course and then they want to have support, that email group continues to offer support. Right. So I know
You're right. I don't advertise it, but you're absolutely right. That's an extra benefit I throw in. We have several people invite. No, I don't mind.
Okay.
I just like to have some extra benefits if someone takes a class that I offer.
Right. It's some of the benefits that people get if they take the class. And so because I've taken the class, I'm part of that email group. And I love because you're talking about subtleties here that during our interview just now that I don't even understand all of them. I know, I mean, I know that if I asked you, you could legally tell me how I could get 50% of the upside equity on a master lease.
Oh, sure.
Right. Sure. That's probably actually not that complicated. I would just have to legally understand how to securitize, how to get that.
You just decide that you don't want to remove your lease the day they want to sell. And that's a problem because most people want rights of possession for a house.
They do.
If it's Wednesday, I don't remove my leases on Wednesday unless money crosses my hand. I have a 35-year lease. I mean, what are you going to do?
See, I tell you, this is why you're the guru. This is why you're the guru in the field and not me. Go a little bit into how you get so you get a long-term master lease and then you get a long-term tenant. And now it's like this optimal program for long-term master lease, long-term tenant. You get to keep part of the upside and you didn't have to put your own equity in, and you get the tax benefits. I can't handle the tax benefits part. I have to confess it's over my head. Right. But I do want to talk for a minute about getting long-term tenants in there and how you make sure they're a long-term tenant.
Well, first of all, you advertise that it's available for long-term occupancy. And the question is, do you set a minimum threshold and it's first come, first served, or do you accept the best qualified applicant? And you always have to know the laws in your state and your local, you know, wherever the heck you are. In California, I think you're going to see a lot more long-term tenants because nowadays you guys have to show cause if you have a rental property and you ever want to terminate their lease. Even if they have a one-year lease, you can't terminate it if they've been there more than 12 months. And they have a limitation as to how much the rent can go up, 5% plus the cost of living from wherever they are.
Yes,
So,
all very upsetting to me as a potential landlord. Go ahead, continue.
and which maybe means you want to be a tenant because those same things would apply to you. Now it's a great position as a master tenant. Think about that.
Right.
But with, so we advertise for that. We look for that. Do we always get it? No, we don't always. Have we had some long-term tenants? Yeah, our longest tenant was 24 years and 10 months. Next longest went 18 years. Have we had shorter term tenants? I've had people that said they want to stay forever, and 3 months into the deal, they moved. I mean, life happens. We had a tenant just this month that let me know that they're moving the end of February. Very inconvenient for me. First of all, I'm in Florida. The property's in Colorado Springs. Secondly, I'm going to Southeast Asia for a month. I'm not going to be back until the 20-something of February. But it all works out. You have the systems, you know how you're going to take care of it. Over 90% of the time, we go from a tenant to a tenant with zero downtime. We don't have this make-ready time, which costs owners so much because tenants typically move out the end of the month. New tenants want to move in the beginning of the month. You take 2 or 3 days to make the property ready. You've lost a month.
Yeah.
Because they need a place then. And so systems are crucial. You can have great people skills, but if you don't have systems, you'll burn out. If you have lousy people skills, but you've got good systems, the systems give you the time to learn the people skills and make it work.
People are just gonna have to take your course. They're just gonna have to trust me that your course on how to get long-term tenants and how to do property management is probably one of the, I don't know, I almost want to say pleasant, but successful. I mean, turnover, like I said, I've owned single families, fourplexes, multi-units, in-state, out-of-state. So I've owned in a variety of ways personally. And the tenants, tantrums, toilets, teenagers, and trash, I keep adding more T's as years go by. I keep adding another T to my list, can be an absolute pain in the backside, right? And it keeps me from wanting to buy back in. But exactly when I take your course, I'm like, well, this is brilliant. Of course, right? Of course you would do this. I mean, I don't really want to, either I want to own a large apartment building where I have on-site management, or I want to own small family homes like you do, where I really am engendering an expectation and a relationship that has these people stay. Make it their home. Make them engaged in it. Have them feel that they have comfort and ease and ownership. And I can't think of all the right words.
They take their house and make it your home. You think about it, the single family house is the only piece of real estate that comes complete with an on-site resident manager who's called tenant.
Right.
Your operating expenses are much lower in a house because a good tenant who you screen for and share expectations will take care of not only the inside, but the outside. If they can walk out the front door, walk all the way around the house and say, get off my property, they'll take care of it if they have a sense of pride, but you got to search for that and screen for that.
And screen for that. And yeah, and you do, and you have this great process. And I love having watched you role model that process. All right, David, how can people get a hold of you and learn from you? Because don't be selfish and not tell us where your courses are and how we can learn more from you.
Yeah, if you just know my name, that's the best way to reach me. DavidTilney.com.
Tilney.
That's right, DavidTilney.com. We don't do a lot of courses. My wife's thinking, we're actually looking for who's going to take it on, because I was taught by some wonderful people, and I'm not going to be here forever. I'm 69 now, and who knows, but they say the memory goes first. Mine's already gone. But my phone number's on there, my email's there. I'm not hiding from people. I don't have product to sell. People always want a seminar in a box. I don't have that. Once or twice a year, we hold a seminar somewhere.
And every other year you're here on this coast, the West Coast, teaching here, and you're at the Masters of Real Estate in Las Vegas on a regular basis.
I've been there. I wouldn't say I'm in the West Coast every other year. West Coast, sometimes there, it just depends. It depends. We never decide until after we've done a seminar what we're going to do another one.
Okay. Somebody who told me that seemed like they were in the know on the David Tilney schedule told me that it's about every other year. So maybe they're full of it.
Well, it may be. California is a great place to go. We've had a lot of fun visiting there. And we get to go to other places while we're there and have a lot of fun, like Yosemite.
Sorry, I interrupted you. You also present at clubs, right? Like you presented at my club, FIBI Pasadena. And hopefully when you come back in town and you're ready to present on the West Coast, when we're deemed worthy enough for you to come speak to us again, you're invited to come to my club.
Love to.
And so, all right, David Tilney, so D-A-V-I-D, and Tilney is T-I-L-N-E-Y. And so David Tilney, and your website has a whole series of information on it. I know it's there and it's very rich, but also Gary Johnston sometimes has your teaching schedule on his site as well. But yeah, it's right here. Hassle-free property management, davidtilney.com.
Yep, that's right. You can get to it several ways, but if you remember my name, that's as good as anything.
All right. Thank you, David, for being a teacher out there. Thank you for helping us all be better and for reaching our financial goals. Thank you for doing that.
Christina, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, my audience. Thank you for listening to Real Estate Breakthrough. You guys will get another show next week. Thanks, David. Take care.